In Port St. Lucie, Florida, there stands a tree the locals call the Devil's Tree. In the 1970s, a cold-blooded killer hung his victims from its twisted branches. Though he died in prison, people believe his spirit and the restless souls of those he murdered remain bound to its roots. At night, the rotted ropes still sway in the wind, creaking with a sound like ragged breath, the last gasps of the hanged. Those who dare to draw near rarely leave whole. Whoa! Florida, though. The summer air was heavy, thick with the swamp's breath, damp earth, rotting leaves, and the faint sting of stagnant water. An old pickup truck rattled to a stop on a dirt road, its headlights slicing the darkness before dying into silence. 4 young travelers climbed out, standing before the wall of forest that marked the edge of Port St. Lucie's wilderness. Ryan was the first to step down, eyes burning with excitement. He had read an old newspaper article about the Devil's Tree, a cursed oak where unspeakable murders had once taken place. For him, this wasn't a warning. It was the perfect urban legend challenge. Lena, his girlfriend, was less enthusiastic. Arms crossed, she stared at the dense tree line with suspicion. "This is insane," she muttered under her breath, though she followed anyway. She wasn't superstitious, not really, but the thought of standing where real people had died twisted her stomach into knots. Chris, tall and broad-shouldered, carried his ever-present video camera. He grinned as he filmed the group, already imagining how the footage would play out. "Found footage gold," he joked, panning across Lena and Maya. But Maya didn't smile. Quiet, withdrawn, she had felt uneasy the moment they pulled off the road. The heaviness in her chest grew stronger with every step. The 4 trekked deeper along the dirt path. The chorus of insects grew sparse, replaced by an unnatural silence. Nearly an hour passed before they stumbled into a small clearing, and there it was. The Devil's Tree. It towered above them, a grotesque sentinel of wood and shadow. Its bark was gnarled and cracked, the limbs bent at odd angles like broken arms. Hollow knots stared back like twisted faces. From the largest branch hung a single rope, frayed and rotting, swaying gently in the warm breeze. The creak it made was sharp, dry, like a strained breath caught in a dying throat. Maya shivered, convinced that unseen eyes were watching from the darkness. Chris raised his camera, tilting slowly upward to capture the full scale of the tree. "Perfect," he whispered. Ryan stepped closer, pressing his palm to the rough bark. Despite the heat around him, the wood was unnaturally cold. For an instant, he swore he felt a faint, steady pulse beneath his hand, like a heartbeat buried in the trunk. He yanked his hand back, masking his unease with a grin. "Here," he said firmly. "We camp here, right under the Devil's Tree." Lena stared once more at the dangling rope, unease clawing at her. But when Ryan struck a match to start a fire and Chris circled eagerly with his camera, she reluctantly joined in. Maya remained seated on the ground, her gaze fixed on the swaying rope, as though she expected something heavy to drop from it at any moment. The night crept in, shadows stretching long and endless. And as darkness swallowed the clearing, the Devil's Tree cast its shadow over them all. Now then. The fire crackled and spat, casting trembling light across the clearing. The 4 sat in a rough circle, beer cans in hand, doing their best to laugh, to pretend at ease. But the massive trunk loomed above, its shadow stretching long and heavy, swallowing the fire's glow as if it wanted to smother the night itself. Chris rarely lowered his camera. He moved slowly, capturing every detail. The frayed rope swaying in the breeze, the warped knots in the bark that resembled twisted faces, the firelight flickering against the tree like shadows writhing across its skin. He smiled, satisfied. This was the perfect set for a horror film. Ryan, with the eager tone of a storyteller, recounted what he had read, how a serial killer once bound his victims, tortured them, then hung their bodies from the very branch above them. The man had died in prison, but visitors swore they'd heard the rasp of tightening rope, seen the silhouette of bodies dangling in the dark. His voice dropped lower, savoring the tension. But as he finished, the forest wind rose suddenly, scattering embers through the air. Lena shivered, her gaze fixed on the rope as it swayed harder. "That's enough, Ryan," she snapped quietly, though gooseflesh prickled her arms. Maya hadn't looked away once. Her voice was barely more than a breath. Is there someone hanging there?" All eyes turned upward. Nothing, just the rope, twisting idly. Chris chuckled, but when he glanced at the viewfinder, his grin faltered. On the tiny screen, a faint silhouette dangled from the branch, its shape swaying in rhythm with the rope. He blinked, tilted the camera again, and it was gone. He said nothing. The night thickened. Around them, the forest was unnervingly still. No crickets, no frogs, only the sigh of wind sliding through the branches. The air grew dense, each breath sticking in their throats. Near midnight, Maya bolted upright, pale and trembling. She stammered that she'd heard whispering right against her ear while her eyes were closed. It said my name," she whispered. Ryan brushed it off, insisting it was her imagination. But then, a sharp crack at the base of the tree. All four heard it, clear, distinct, like a rope tightening. Chris swung the camera around, its small light piercing the dark. The rope was swaying violently now, emitting a dry, grating screech, as if some unseen weight was dragging it taut. The fire roared suddenly, then sputtered to embers, leaving only a faint, unsteady glow. The shadow of the tree lengthened, stretching over the camp like a predator's hand. Lena clutched Ryan's arm, whispering that they needed to leave. But the path they had taken was gone, swallowed into an endless wall of black. A chill swept through the clearing, though the air was perfectly still. The rope jerked wildly, then stopped all at once, hanging slack, as if something had just dropped from it. Maya burst into sobs. Chris filmed frantically, but through his lens, he saw only twisted branches, curling and stretching like skeletal arms, waiting to receive them. Ryan forced himself to stand, voice trembling. "It's fine," he said, though his bravado had cracked. He lifted his flashlight and trained it on the rope. Empty. Nothing there. And yet, they all knew. They were no longer alone beneath the devil's tree. Norton, shy. The night pressed in heavy and absolute, the fire reduced to dying embers, the only real light, the trembling beam of Ryan's flashlight. The four of them huddled close, breaths short and ragged, as though the darkness would swallow them whole if they strayed apart. Chris held his camera tight, eyes glued to the screen. To the naked eye, the rope was empty, but through the lens, something else appeared. A pale, blurred figure hanging limp, head slumped to the side, hair shrouding its face. He shuddered but couldn't look away. When he panned to another branch, another body swung there, then another. and another. 2, 3, 4, until the clearing seemed choked with swaying spectral shapes. His throat was dry as he whispered, trembling, "Guys, look at this!" Ryan snatched the camera, pressing his face close to the viewfinder. The excitement drained from him, replaced by a stark pallor. It's just a glitch," he insisted. But when he lifted his flashlight and swept the beam across the tree, Lena screamed. For an instant, they all saw it. No camera tricks, no shadows. A body dangled from the branch before them, swaying in the breeze. The skin was ashen, the head hung low, the weight shifting with each creak of the rope. And then, as if dispersed by the air itself, it vanished, leaving the rope to swing hollow once more. Silence. Only Maya's choked sobs broke it. Ryan tried to steady his voice, though it trembled. Hallucinations were just stressed. But even as he spoke, a sharp crack split the stillness, like a branch snapping under a heavy load. Lena spun around and froze. Just a few steps behind her, another hanged figure. Its eyes were open, rolled white, fixed directly on her. Her scream tore through the clearing as she yanked Ryan to the ground. The fire spat and flared, shadows whipping wildly. Chris swung the camera in every direction, capturing what none of them could deny now. Dozens of figures suspended above, crowding the branches. Some only faint outlines, others so vivid he could see the deep purple bruises wrapped around their necks. Maya clutched her ears, shrieking, "They're whispering! They're calling me! They want me to follow!" Lena sized her shoulders, fighting to hold her back, but Maya writhed, as though invisible hands were dragging her toward the trunk. Ryan raised his light, shouting into the void, "We're not afraid. We only came to see." But his voice was drowned in the sudden chorus of sound, the simultaneous screech of ropes straining, taut and merciless. Above, the phantom bodies swayed together in rhythm, a silent choir twisting in a wind that wasn't there. A pale glow shimmered faintly, as though the clearing itself had become a macabre stage. Chris let the camera drop, clutching his head, mumbling, "They're not going away. They're here. They want us to take their place." The fire died with a hiss, plunging everything into suffocating black. Only Ryan's flashlight flickered, its beam jittering across fractured glimpses of horror. And in that trembling glow, all three saw the same vision. Themselves, each one of them, hanging from the branches. Bloated faces, bulging eyes, rope-burned necks. The flashlight clattered to the ground, rolling, casting fractured light up the trunk of the devil's tree. Maya went still, her eyes emptied, her lips moved with a voice that wasn't hers. "You cannot leave. The tree has chosen." No one had time to react. A sudden gust of icy air swept the clearing, and the rope groaned loud and sharp, ready, waiting for a neck to claim. "Nyobima." The wind howled through the clearing like a chorus of the damned. Shadows danced wildly across the devil's tree, broken fragments of light from Ryan's fallen flashlight stuttering across the dirt and flaring briefly against the swaying figures above. Maya stood rigid, eyes rolled white, lips moving ceaselessly. "It's calling me, telling me to climb higher. It says I'll be free." Her voice was no longer her own. It was layered, distorted, as though countless other voices were speaking through her, groaning from deep within the earth. Lena clutched her tightly, sobbing. Don't listen. Maya. It's not real. It's not. But Maya's body was cold and stiff, as lifeless as a corpse on its feet. Ryan lunged forward, grabbing Maya's arm to pull her away from the trunk. The moment he touched her, a crushing force clamped onto his hand. Agony seared down to his bones. He tore himself free with a scream, collapsing, his palm seared red with rope-like burns, as though the bark itself had branded him. "The tree," Chris stammered, his camera trembling in his grip. "It's alive. It wants blood. It won't let us leave." He swung the lens upward and saw that the hanging shapes were no longer spectral illusions. They moved, their heads tilted in unison, gazes falling on the living below. White, lidless eyes gaped wide, mouths hung open. And for a heartbeat, Chris swore he heard it, the collective crack of necks snapping, echoing through the clearing. Then it struck. From above, a rope uncoiled, slithering down with the speed of a striking snake. In an instant, the noose cinched tight around Maya's throat and yanked her skyward. Her scream split the night. She kicked and clawed, her legs thrashing as the rope bit deeper, skin darkening to a brutal violet. Lena and Ryan seized her legs, dragging downward with all their strength, but the invisible force from the tree pulled harder, inexorable. Inch by inch, Maya rose into the air. "Cut it! Cut the rope!" Ryan roared. Chris fumbled in his pack, yanked out a small knife, and slashed at the noose. Sparks flew as the blade bounced off. The rope wasn't fiber at all, but something impossibly hard, like frozen steel. Chris staggered back, hands trembling. Maya shrieked, then fell silent. Her body twitched violently before sagging, limp. Her eyes bulged, her chest heaving ragged gasps that faltered and broke. The only sound was the dry rasp of the rope grinding against bark. "No!" Lena screamed, clawing at the tree itself, her fingers splitting, blood streaking the bark. But the branches writhed like grotesque limbs, curling out and striking her down into the dirt. Ryan's voice cracked into madness. He threw his arms wide, shouting at the looming trunk. "What do you want? Take me instead. Let her go." And the forest answered. A laughter erupted, harsh, guttural, spilling from every direction at once. It was everywhere, echoing in the trees, grinding through the soil, shaking in their bones. The hanged shadows thrashed wildly, swaying like a grotesque choir applauding his desperate plea. Chris filmed, his voice breaking into a whisper. "It never lets go. Anyone who comes here belongs to it." Maya dangled high above, her neck grotesquely twisted. And then, slowly, her lifeless eyes rolled forward, bleaching to a blank, vacant stare. The same hollow gaze as the others. Another body had joined the Devil's Tree's eternal chorus of the damned. "Penny, now." Maya dangled in the air, her body limp, her face bruised and purple, her eyes hollowed into something that no longer belonged to the living. Lena screamed her name again and again, but her cries were swallowed by the skeletal trees, fading into nothingness. Ryan yanked Lena to her feet, the burn marks of the rope still glowing red across his palm. His voice cracked, raw with desperation. "We have to leave, now, before it takes us too." Chris clutched the camera tight, trembling. "You don't get it. There is no way out. It won't let us go." As if to confirm his words, The forest shifted before their eyes. The path they had taken to enter this place was gone, swallowed whole. In its place loomed walls of trees, their twisted branches knitting together like blackened fingers to bar their escape. Every direction they turned, the beam of the flashlight cut only into suffocating dark, heavy with swaying silhouettes, bodies swinging just beyond reach. Lena's teeth chattered. It's like we're trapped inside it. Ryan's grip tightened around the knife, his eyes feral. Then we kill it. We cut the damn tree down. He lunged at the gnarled trunk, hacking again and again. Each strike rang out not like wood, but like shrieks, agonized, piercing, human. Thick sap bled from the wounds, dark and syrupy, reeking of iron and rot. The stench gagged Lena. She doubled over, retching. Chris instinctively raised the camera. Through the lens, Ryan's form blurred, his face flickering into that of a hanging corpse, eyes bulging, mouth gaping in eternal scream. "Ryan, stop!" Chris cried out. "It's turning you into one of them." The knife slipped from Ryan's grip. He staggered back, clawing at his throat. Rope marks carved deep across his neck, tightening as if dragged by an invisible noose. His breath hitched, a wet rattle. He reached toward Lena with trembling fingers. "Run, Lena, run." She seized his hand, sobbing, trying to wrench him free from the tree's hold. But in a heartbeat, the darkness surged, devouring him whole. When the flashlight swung back, Ryan was gone. Only a rope dangled gently from a branch, swaying in silence. Lena collapsed, choking on grief. Chris hauled her up, his own voice shredded. "We have to keep moving. We have to try." They stumbled blindly through the shifting woods, but the deeper they ran, the more the forest filled with them. Bodies, hanging from every branch, dozens, hundreds. Vacant eyes followed their steps, mouths slack in silent mockery. Among the faces, Lena saw Maya, Ryan, and countless others she didn't know, victims of generations past, bound eternally to the tree's curse. Their family had grown. The flashlight sputtered, its glow-dimming battery drained to the final breath. Chris whispered to the dark, as if confessing to himself. "As long as the camera records, someone will know. Someone has to know." But Lena already understood. No one would believe. No one would ever find them. The wind rose in a hollow roar, twisting into laughter, into a dirge. Overhead, the moon vanished behind the branches, smothered. The forest drowned in black. The tree had chosen. Arnin. My daughter Clara was always unlike the other children her age. She was quiet, withdrawn, and had little interest in making friends. Whenever she brought someone home, they rarely returned a second time. Before long, Clara stopped being invited to anyone else's house altogether. She didn't care for television, the radio, or the pastimes that kept other kids busy. Books were the only thing she wanted. I regret to say I was too preoccupied to notice what she was actually reading. If only I had. When she entered her teenage years, Clara changed even more. She seemed detached from everything around her, uninterested in the world. And where she once devoured book after book, now she clung to just one. an old leather-bound Bible. At the time, I considered it a blessing. While my friends fretted about their daughters running wild or falling into trouble, I felt proud that mine was quiet, obedient, and devout. I believed those were the good days, before everything unraveled. It began one night when I couldn't sleep. As I rolled over, I noticed Clara in the doorway of my room. The lights were off, but I could clearly see her silhouette. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. I called her name softly, then louder, but she gave no sign of hearing me. Uneasy, I got out of bed, switched on the light, and told her it was late and she needed to return to her room. Convinced she had been sleepwalking, I thought little of it. But it didn't stop. Night after night, I would open my eyes to find her there again, staring silently from the doorway. Not once did I see her approach. It was as if she simply appeared. At first, I roused myself each time to guide her back to bed. But after a week, I stopped. It unnerved me, yes, but I was tired and let her remain. I told myself it was harmless, though deep down, I knew it was anything but. Then came the night when everything shifted. I remember tossing in my sleep, trying to find comfort. I assumed Clara was in the doorway as usual, but when I sat up, the space was empty, only the door hung wide open. A chill crept over me as I walked the dark hallway to her room. What I found froze me in place. Clara was suspended in the air, 4 feet above her bed. A moment later, she drifted upward until she pressed against the ceiling, crawling across it as though gravity itself had turned against her. I ran. I dialed the church in desperation, calling until the priest finally answered. He insisted I bring Clara at once. By the time I reached her, she had fallen from the ceiling, but now she was vacant, an empty shell. She would not respond, not even when shaken. I carried her into the car, drove her to the church, and placed her in their care. The priests sprinkled holy water, and for a fleeting moment, Clara stirred. They placed her in the confessional, hoping to reach her. What she admitted there made my blood run cold. She confessed she had been practicing rituals, dark invocations drawn from the very book I thought was a Bible. Its cover had been a disguise. Inside, the words belonged not to God, but to Satan. Moments later, she slipped back into that lifeless state, and the priest confirmed what I dreaded most. My daughter was possessed. The exorcism began immediately. What followed was the most harrowing ordeal of my life. Clara thrashed and screamed with inhuman strength, her voice shifting between her own and something guttural, mocking. "The power of Christ compels you. Release this innocent soul," cried the priest. "I'll crush your throat and split your skull," the demon answered through her lips. "Clara, stop," I screamed. "Your daughter is already burning in hell," the voice hissed. The struggle raged for hours. Chairs splintered. Holy men were thrown to the ground, yet they persisted. At last, the demon relented, driven out by sheer force of prayer and will. Clara fell limp, free at last. The aftermath. But victory came at too great a price. Clara's body was ruined from the torment. Her heart, weakened by what she endured, could not hold out. Not long after her deliverance, she died. Every day since, I've carried the same guilt, that I did not pay attention sooner, that I did not take the strange book from her hands, that I let her stand in my doorway night after night. If only I had acted earlier, perhaps she would still be alive. This tale mirrors the real case of Clara Germana Selle, a young South African girl said to have been possessed in 1906. Accounts tell she spoke languages she had never learned, revealed secrets of strangers, hurled nuns aside with unnatural strength, and levitated several feet into the air. Patty. Witnesses described her screams as animalistic, her hatred of holy objects absolute. Two priests, Reverend Mansuetti and Reverend Erasmus, performed her exorcism, which lasted for 2 full days. At its end, the demon was expelled, and the girl was delivered. Whether history or legend, such stories endure as chilling reminders of how easily darkness can wear a familiar face. Meera Kapoor lived with her parents in a lavish apartment in Mumbai. Her appearance had changed drastically over the last few weeks. Her skin had lost its glow, her cheeks were hollow, and her eyes were sunken as though every drop of life had been drained from her body. Her mother, Nandita, could hardly bear to see her only daughter in this condition. Every night she sat by Meera's bedside, silently weeping, praying for her recovery. Meera was adored by her colleagues, her neighbors, and her extended family. No one could imagine what misfortune had suddenly struck her. It had started innocently. First, a low fever, then recurring headaches, and within a month, Meera was bedridden, slipping in and out of consciousness. She had been taken to some of the best hospitals in the city, yet her condition worsened day by day. To make matters more devastating, her wedding was only weeks away. Seeing her condition, her fiancé's family broke off the engagement. The Kapoors, desperate, invited a priest to conduct rituals in the home. But instead of improving, Meera's state took a terrifying turn. Late one night, the household was startled awake by a chilling scream. Rushing to her room, Nandita and her husband, Raghav, found the lights flickering and the room unnaturally dark. Meera was clawing at the wall with her bare hands. Blood streamed from her fingers, but she showed no sign of pain. "Meera, what are you doing, child?" Nandita cried, trying to pull her back. Meera turned her head slowly, her eyes glowing red, and a twisted laugh escaped her lips, a sound so cold that Nandita felt her body tremble. From that night, nothing was the same. Meera screamed at unseen figures, spoke in guttural tones and languages unknown, and often sat staring at the wall for hours. Doctors dismissed it as a psychiatric breakdown and advised immediate admission to a mental health facility. But her parents refused to believe it. They clung to hope, believing something else was tormenting their daughter. At this time, Raghav's elder sister, Shanti Devi, came from her ancestral village near Nashik. She was a woman of age and experience, with lines of wisdom carved into her face. Having grown up amidst tales of spirits and rituals, she immediately sensed something was wrong. When she approached Meera's room, she stopped at the doorway. A strange heaviness pressed against her chest. "The air here is not clean," she muttered. "This is no illness." Inside, the curtains were shut, the air unnaturally cold. Symbols were scratched into the walls, and Meera sat hunched in a disturbing posture, her eyes blood red. Nandita whispered, "Sister," before she fell ill. She had gone somewhere. Last month she went to Himachal Pradesh for work. Shanti's face darkened. Since she returned, her health has collapsed. Then I fear she has brought something back with her, Your daughter is not ill, she is possessed. If we don't act soon, we may lose her. The very next morning, the family set out with Mira for Himachal. But the road itself turned into a battlefield. In the car, she screamed and laughed hysterically, at times trying to smash the glass windows. Her voice changed, sometimes whispering curses, sometimes crying, and other times muttering, "He is waiting. He will take me away." Raghav gripped the wheel in fear, but they did not stop. After hours of struggle, they finally arrived at an ancient temple, hidden deep in the Kulu Valley, dedicated to a fierce local deity. The temple walls bore strange inscriptions, and the surrounding forest seemed alive with whispers. Inside waited a frail old sadhu whose eyes held a piercing intensity. One look at Mira and he declared, "This is no ordinary spirit. It is the wandering soul of a man who died unmarried, cursed to roam and seek a vessel. He has chosen your daughter." The parents fell to his feet. "Save her, please, Baba. She is our only child." The ritual of blood and fire. That night, a haven was prepared. Mira was placed before the sacred flames. The sadhu chanted fiercely, but Mira only sneered. "You cannot free her," the voice growled through her lips. "She belongs to me." The Baba knew the spirit would not leave without a price. A sacrifice must be made, a goat and wine to appease him. Though horrified, the parents agreed. A goat was brought, and as the ceremony reached its height, Raghav placed a plate of meat and a vessel of wine before Mira. At once, her eyes lit with ravenous hunger. She lunged forward, snarling. The sadhu held back the plate. "Only if you release her, spirit. Choose, the girl or the offering." "I want the offering. Then I will leave her body," the voice growled. The sadhu pushed the plate toward her. Mira tore into the meat like a starving beast, devouring every piece until she collapsed unconscious. When she awoke, she was herself again, weak, frightened, but free. Back in Mumbai, Mira slowly regained her strength, but Nandita's mind was unsettled. She had to know how this began. Reluctantly, Mira recounted the trip. She and her colleagues had gone trekking. Her friend Ria led her deep into the woods for photographs. But then, Ria disappeared. Alone, Mira had heard a strange voice. A shadow appeared before her. After that, nothing. "Suspicious," Nandita confronted Ria. At first, Ria denied it, but soon her face twisted into a cruel smile. "Yes, I left her there. I was sick of Mira. Everyone adored her. The boss, the team, even the man I loved chose her. That forest is cursed, and I knew the spirit would take her." "You nearly killed my daughter," Nandita shouted. "You can't prove it," Ria smirked. "No one believes in ghosts." But Mira had secretly recorded her confession. Within days, Ria was dismissed from her job in disgrace. Years have passed, but Mira still struggles with trust. She fears friendship, for betrayal hides behind smiling faces. And though her health is restored, her eyes sometimes wander to the shadows, as though she remembers the spirit that almost claimed her. And I, as her mother, still wake some nights to the sound of that laughter echoing through my mind. This happened 4 years ago. I was 12, going on 13 in just a month or two. My friend Lindsay was 14, which was quite a bit older than me, at least at the time, as the 2-year age gap was pretty big. We met in school and quickly became close friends. We were spending almost every single weekend together. Nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. It was your typical Friday night. We carpooled to her family's apartment after school to spend the night together. After we ate dinner, me and Lindsay went to go hang out in her room. Now, Lindsay wasn't always a positive influence. She had a habit of talking to older guys online and lying about her age. Lindsay showed me some texts between her and a man she was talking to. I don't remember exactly what they said, but they consisted of him trying to convince her to meet up with him, and just the usual things you'd expect from a creep online. According to him, he was 19, tall, and blonde. Once I saw the text, I asked for a picture of him. Something didn't sit right with me after seeing the messages. She showed me what he looked like, and he was very clearly not 19. The man was at least 40, and looked like he lived in his mother's basement. That's when Lindsay's phone started ringing. It was the guy. Lindsay answered without hesitation, and when I heard the voice on the other end of the call, I felt like I was going to be sick. I could clearly hear the guy trying to convince Lindsay to meet up with him. Lindsay replied, saying she couldn't, because she was spending the night with a friend. The mention of that must have sparked his interest, as the guy then proceeded to try and ask to meet both of us. Lindsay, lacking any common sense, said yes, and thus began our plan to sneak out and walk to meet this random guy in a Chick-fil-A parking lot. I obviously didn't want to go. I was raised on stories of what happens to teen girls who meet random men from the internet in person. But after adamant pleading from Lindsay that she didn't feel safe going by herself, I agreed. We took our phones with us for the walk. The route we had to take to get there didn't have very many street lamps, and there weren't any houses. We were surrounded by trees on both sides of us. When we got to the parking lot, it was almost empty. The Chick-fil-A was about 15 minutes from closing, and since Lindsay hadn't received a text from the guy saying he was there yet, we decided to go inside. We ordered some milkshakes and went to go sit in one of the booths while we waited. But while we were sitting inside, I couldn't help but notice a car pulling into the parking lot, just continually circling the building. The car clearly wasn't looking for a parking spot, as it went around the building very slowly, around 10 times, all the while. Me and Lindsay were just watching it from inside. After we finished our milkshakes, the car was gone, and Lindsay never got a text from the guy saying he was there. So we just decided to head back home. I was honestly insanely relieved that the guy never ended up showing up. But as we were walking home, I couldn't help but notice how many times a car passed us. The street we walked on to get back was almost completely desolate, with trees on either side of us, so to have even 2 cars pass us would have been rare. But I ignored it. It didn't look like Lindsay even noticed. We got home, and since it was late, we decided to just go to bed in Lindsay's room. Fast forward to around 4 a.m., we woke up to a loud bang. It sounded like someone smacking on the window, though Lindsay's room was on the 2nd floor, meaning something must have been thrown. Me and Lindsay both sat up and looked at each other. The sound came again, that same bang. We both agreed someone had to have been outside. And just then we heard the heart-dropping sound of a voice whispering, "Hey Lindsay, it's me. I followed you guys home." We both instantly panicked in reaction. We knew exactly who that was. I started crying. I was honestly terrified. Lindsay ran to her parents' room and explained the situation. Her parents instantly called the police, but of course, when they showed up, the guy was gone. Lindsay went to show them the conversations, but the account was deleted. Neither of us remembered the username either, so there was quite literally nothing the cops could do to take a report. The whole encounter was really disturbing. Lindsay's parents were really mad with her, and this caused me to lose connection with her as a friend over the next few months. I haven't seen her in a while. I'm not entirely sure whatever ended up happening with the whole situation. I just hope that guy never returned. My wife and I were looking for a used car on Facebook Marketplace, and actually found one we were really interested in. It was honestly a really good deal, and as soon as we saw it, we texted the seller saying we were interested. The seller seemed perfectly normal over text, and we agreed to meet in a public mall parking lot. He said he wouldn't be available until he got off work at 5, so we agreed to do the transaction at 5:30. Come 5:30, and we arrive at the mall, telling the seller what car we were in, just to get a text saying he was running late. We weren't in any hurry, and we figured he'd only be like 30 minutes or so. We both agreed it'd be a good idea to go into the mall and get some food at the food court while we waited. A good 2 hours went by, both of us pretty impatient at this point. That's when we got a text saying the guy would be at the mall soon. This was in late fall, so it was already getting dark, and we were starting to worry that the mall wouldn't be as busy soon. A little bit later, the guy texted us saying we should meet him at another location about 30 minutes away, in a rougher area of the city. I looked up the address and found it was a gas station right off the interstate. What caught my eye was the hours. It wasn't one of those 24-hour gas stations, and they were actually already closed. My wife mentioned how many red flags the whole situation was giving off, but honestly, all I was thinking about was the car and how good of a deal we had found, so we ignored them. We sent over a text saying we'd be there in 30 minutes, and pulled out of the mall parking lot, making our way to the gas station. When we got there, we pulled into the parking lot and quickly realized how dead the whole area was. There were only like a few vehicles parked. After about a minute, my wife pointed out the car, and sure enough, there it was. But it looked to be in way worse condition than the original pictures on Facebook Marketplace. The car was in a pretty dark spot in the parking lot, way in the back. I started pulling up to it when I stopped. My wife looked at me confused, but I swear I could see something. I got out of the car, and that's when my suspicion was confirmed. There was a spike strip right in the middle of the road, exactly where I would need to go to pull up next to the car. At that point, I knew something wasn't right. I got back in the car, backed up, and left the way I came. Once I got back home, I reported the whole situation to the cops. Though I never even saw anyone, the only evidence I could give was the ad itself. I never knew what came of the whole situation, but the ad was taken down a few days later. I never heard back from the cops, so if they caught anyone or not, I don't know. Either way, this situation has caused me to be a lot more cautious when using services like Facebook Marketplace. I had just moved into a new apartment, and being the broke post-grad I was, I had pretty much nothing except a few boxes of stuff from my parents' house. It was nice to be done with school and have my own place, yeah, but I didn't even have any furniture. Like I said, I was completely broke, so I thought maybe I'd be able to find something at least decent on the free section of Facebook Marketplace. If you've ever searched for furniture on Facebook Marketplace, you know it's not great. Half the couches are held up with duct tape or something along those lines. I knew I couldn't be picky, but I wanted something that could at least last me until I had enough money to buy a nice one. I'd been scrolling for well over an hour, and was probably already a week into the backlogs. I scrolled back to the top and refreshed the page. The second I did, I saw an ad pop up titled, "Brand new couch, never used, free for pickup." The post wasn't even a minute old, and I knew I had to be quick if I was going to have a chance at getting this thing. The couch was in perfect condition. I quickly typed out a response to the seller, saying I'd be willing to take it off their hands. I got a response not even 3 minutes later that read, "Yeah, the couch is all yours if you can come pick it up tonight. I'm available anytime past 9 p.m. I was slightly put off by the response. It was currently noon, and this guy wanted me to wait till 9 p.m. to pick it up, way past when the sun would have gone down. But I ignored it, thinking maybe the guy had work till then or something. So I texted him back saying that was fine and proceeded to wait. Come 8:30, I sent over a text to the guy saying I was on my way. I typed in the guy's address and quickly realized he lived in the middle of nowhere. Now, I live right next to the Rocky Mountains, so yeah, there aren't that many people nearby. But this guy was seriously in the middle of nowhere. My GPS said it would take 45 minutes to get there, so I quickly set off. As I drove, the housing development slowly became less and less frequent. Sure enough, there was an actually decent-looking house, but there was no other civilization for at least a few miles. Somehow, I had service and was able to send out a text telling the guy I was there. Not even 10 seconds later, I got a response simply saying, "Okay." I figured that was this guy's way of telling me he was ready, so I walked up to the front door. I knocked on the door, to which someone responded in a muffled voice, "The door's unlocked, come on in." From the way the voice sounded, it was as if whoever said it was right on the other side of the door. I opened the door and peeked inside before entering. I quickly realized how weird this situation was. The place was pitch black, with not a single light on. Now, this was before every cell phone had a flashlight on it, so literally all I could use to help me see was the moonlight shining in from one of the windows. I yelled out a hello, to which I could hear someone responding from a door on my left that was open, and I could tell it led to a basement. The voice said, "Come on down here. I got the couch ready to be moved." At this point, I was completely on edge. I replied saying, No, that's okay. I gotta go." I turned around, swung open the front door, and started running back to my car. I unlocked it, got in, and proceeded to relock the doors. I gave one last glance at the house before leaving. No one had chased me, though through one of the windows I could see the dark outlines of 4 different men just looking out at my car. I booked it out of there at that point and drove straight back to my apartment. When I got back, I checked my phone to see I had 3 new messages from the guy's number. The first one asked why I left, followed by one asking if I still wanted the couch. But the third one is what disturbs me most. It simply read, "You're lucky." This is by far the most disturbing experience of my life, and it's caused me to never use Facebook Marketplace or anything similar again. To this day, I'm convinced those guys in that house that night never had the intention to sell me a couch. A few weeks ago, I had to fly out to a small town I'd never been to before in order to look for a place to live at for school. I was flying alone, though before the trip I had researched all sorts of apartments in the area on Facebook Marketplace and was actually able to set up a few meetings to look at places. The first meeting was in the late afternoon, in a sort of remote residential area. The landlord sounded fine over email and asked me to call him an hour before meeting him to confirm I was coming. And so I did just that. I called him an hour before, but he didn't answer. I decided to just start walking to the house and hope the landlord would show up by the time I got there. About an hour later, the guy called me. He asked me if I was still coming, to which I replied, "Yeah, I'm actually only about 5 minutes away." Though the guy's reply caught me completely off guard, he replied furious, saying I wasn't supposed to show up for another hour. I quickly realized he was right. Back then, I had a pretty old phone. It wouldn't automatically change times whenever you switched time zones. I forgot to change it manually, and I realized I was showing up an hour early. I explained the situation to the guy over the phone, but I could tell the dude was furious. Now, I get, I was in the wrong, but still, getting that mad over something as small as this seemed weird to me. I explained to the guy I'd be willing to just stay outside of the house till the agreed upon time, to which he quickly replied saying, "No," almost pleading with me. At this point, alarms were going off in my head, but I ignored them as I really needed a place to live. I decided I'd just go get some food at a nearby place to pass the time until I needed to be at the house for the tour. Once the time came for the tour, I showed up to meet the guy. The guy looked to be in his 50s, and if I'm being honest, he looked disgusting. Some of his clothes were half torn, and it didn't even look like he showered for weeks. I didn't feel comfortable, and found myself just wanting to leave. Though, like I said, I really needed to find somewhere to live, and there weren't that many choices in terms of real estate at that point, so I decided to stay. As I was discussing the details about the house with the guy, I couldn't help but notice a man leave the house from a back exit. This man was young and extremely sketchy looking, even more so than the guy I was talking to. He took one look at us, ran out of the house to his car, and pulled away. At this point, I was full-on disturbed. I asked the guy who that was, to which he replied it was another person he was giving a tour to earlier. The guy then proceeded to ask me a lot of questions. They weren't normal questions a landlord would ask, but rather more personal questions, like how old I was or what I was going to school for, the whole time staring into my eyes without blinking. I tried to give answers that were as vague as possible. Finally, we entered the house. Now, from the outside, the house actually looked decent, but upon entering, you could tell the place wasn't taken good care of. I followed the guy as we walked around the house, looking at all the rooms. Every time I would ask about the condition of the house, the guy would avoid the question, simply saying it was unfinished. After we finished looking at all the rooms, the guy mentioned he wanted to show me a shed in the backyard of the house. Before I could say anything, the guy told me to follow him as he led me to the back of the house, outside, away from the street, to this sort of detached shed. When we got there, he opened the door, and I quickly noticed that there were stairs leading down into utter darkness. He flipped on a switch at the top of the stairs, but no light came on. Normally the response for this would be surprise, or something like that. But he didn't say anything and just started slowly walking down into the utter darkness, as if he expected no light to come on. The guy was now just standing there at the bottom of the stairs in the dark and said, "Aren't you coming down?" I said nothing, still in shock that the landlord wanted me to follow him down into this dark basement, cut off from the rest of the house for whatever reason. I glanced back at the house and saw another guy in the backyard doorway. I panicked and ran into the woods. I didn't look back, and honestly, I didn't want to. I don't know if they followed me, but after about a half-mile of running, I turned around to find no one. I quickly realized the situation I was in. I was in the middle of the forest at sunset, with people possibly chasing me. Though luckily, my phone had service, and I was able to find my way back to the hotel I was staying at with no other problems. As soon as I got back, I Googled the house and did some more research on it. Apparently, The house had been abandoned for 3 years. I checked the status of the original Facebook Marketplace posts I had responded to, but of course, it was deleted. I debated whether or not to call the cops and report the situation, but decided against it, as I figured there wasn't much they could do. I can only imagine the guys I encountered that night were a group of homeless people with some unknown intentions. Whatever the case, the whole situation was extremely disturbing.